Hi, Bruins. Welcome to the third episode of UCLA Alumni's Living Globally Google On Air series. My name is Gloria Ko, Director of Young Alumni and Student Engagement here at UCLA, and I'm excited to present to you this program today with two awesome alumni who will be sharing their experiences about the job search abroad. So we started the Living Globally series because we had so many alumni who were really interested in finding out more about what it was like to live abroad, to work abroad, or just to even start the process. And so we thought, what better way to teach alumni this by having other alumni who've gone through this experience and are experts in the field, why not have them teach? And so we're really excited for our presenters today. Before I introduce our speakers, however, let's take care of a little bit of housekeeping. So to take full advantage of this session, you're going to have to be sure to log into Google, so that way you can take advantage of our Q&A portion. There is a button at your top right that has a Q&A button, so be sure to click on that so that you can answer questions or see what other questions are coming down the pipeline. If you be sure to click onto this area too if you want to type in a question that you have. If you see a question that you like and you would like to have that question answered as well, click on the +1 under each question, so that way we can see that you really are interested in that as well. So if you have any questions, feel free to just put them right there. So let's get started. I am joined today by two of our awesome alumni who will share with us their experiences on finding a job abroad. So first, I'll have them introduce themselves, their name, when they graduated from UCLA, where they are, and what they're doing. So let's get started. Derek, why don't you start us off?
Hi, everybody. I'm really happy and excited to be here. Thank you for inviting me. I graduated from UCLA in 1992 with English. I'm based now in Shanghai, China. Not using my English literature major a lot, but really have 17 years in total. An executive search. So we're called headhunters, and I work with a firm that's a European boutique called Salmon. I'm currently on the UCLA Alumni Board, which is very exciting for me, and I'm really happy to be staying well connected with UCLA. So thank you for having me.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for taking the time, Derek. And also to our second speaker, Bernadita.
Hi, I'm Bernadita Mantiola. I graduated with a degree in art history in 1991. Unlike Derek, I actually continue using my degree very much and have always worked in the fine arts. I am currently a director of a non-profit contemporary art foundation. We give, in Santiago, Chile, we give Chilean artist residency programs to go to London to Gasworks. We also have an editorial area where we publish books on Chilean artists. We have a international art collection that we exhibit, and we also bring different exhibitions to Chile. Right now, we're currently bringing an exhibition of David LaChapelle to Santiago, Chile. So, thank you.
Awesome. Well, wonderful. So why don't we jump into the questions that we already have on our Q&A section. So with our first question, are there different job search websites for different countries? And if not, what are the best ones to utilize? Derek, if you could answer that question first.
Sure. I think there are different job sites for different countries. For example, there are several different websites. A website called wejobs.com, which is 51 jobs. We have momo.com. They're all pretty much local Chinese job websites, and Hong Kong is I know in the U.S. a lot of people and LinkedIn. LinkedIn is also used in China would say LinkedIn is really used for the professionals who have. So if we're talking about Chinese companies, local companies in China, they LinkedIn, but it's still being used. So that's an interesting way to actually see what's going on in China and people connecting. So LinkedIn is actually quite a useful.
Great.
I'll just say quickly, in Chile there are several websites as well. I personally don't use them because of my particular field is something that's very specific. So I actually go into websites that are art specialist websites that are more international websites where I mean, I can't remember exactly which one, but I think it still exists. It's Art Jobs, which I think you have to pay a membership for. And there's a couple of others. I usually, if you go on Twitter and you look up art jobs, you'll find the different websites and companies that advertise, because for art history degree graduates, it's quite hard, and you need to be much more specific.
I see. Great. Thank you.
I would. One thing is that the webs are often tools to get information, as to using it to actually, oftentimes it works really well if you connect through their own website. So that's another way that, because you can see jobs posted maybe on them on LinkedIn postings. Also actually go to the company itself if you know that they're looking, and sometimes that's even a more direct and effective way to get jobs.
Great. Thank you, Derek. So for our next question, one is about language. So are language needs typically included in the job description, or should you ask about them in an initial interview? When should that topic come up? Derek, if you can start, that'd be great.
Sure. So language is important. It's important for many reasons. I would say the most important reasons is that if you want to really work in that local region or that country, it will help you to understand the market better. It'll understand the culture of the people and your colleagues and your customers and whoever you're dealing with better. It makes you also look more professional and serious as somebody who's connected in that country and wanting to actually do business or wanting to be in that country. So I think that language is quite important. It's not necessary, to get your foot in the door to start working in a company, because you may have other skill sets that a company would value. Even English would be a good skill set to have, for example, in China. But I think that overall, then once you get your foot into the door and you actually start working there, you should try to pick up the language just to understand how things work, the culture and whatever it is that you want to try to accept or be a professional in. It will be a lot of value to you, and it also shows good attitude, behavior, which I think would be appreciated a lot by the local people.
Yes, I agree with that. I think also a lot of times if you offer to say, I can have the interview in whatever language is the native language, I am available for an interview in whatever language, because a lot of times they will want to know what your level of fluency really is.
That's great. Thank you. Awesome. So for our next question, so this one is about kind of interviews. So how are interviews conducted if you're still in the States while you're searching, and how common common is it for employers to conduct interviews through video conferencing, or is it better to plan and conduct interviews in person? Derek, would you want to start us off?
Sure. You know, in terms of conducting an interview, my job, so I do this a lot, Skype video interviewing, Skype seems to be the most way in this part of the world because it's well known. And so a lot of companies will use Skype to do an interview because it's not so convenient to do things in person. If we're talking, let's say, or London and Los Angeles, it's just easier by Skype, and it works well. It's not the best place, so at a certain point, you can always ask, have a meeting in person. This is also oftentimes a good way, number one, to show your interest, as well as you know, get connected physically. The interviews are better. People can get to know you, and you to get to know them better. You can build a connection, which I think for interviewing could be actually quite useful. It's building that connection. So in person, it's obviously better, but for the sake of distance, I would say it's very common to do a Skype. And what happens, you know, for a normal interview or a job selection process through many interviews by Skype, and they'll take one or two candidates to go through in a physical or in person, I should say, interview.
I would say that in Santiago, it's very similar. We're very far away from what most people consider the rest of the world, probably like you in Shanghai. So we do have to have a lot of Skype. We use a lot of Skype. We also use FaceTime. But in Chile in particular, I don't know if this is specific as it is a Latin country, connections are very important, getting to know people in person. You know, if you happen to know that you're going to be traveling, let's say, to wherever, and you know that one of the people that you want to meet with is also going to be traveling, they'll make that effort to meet you in person when you're doing an interview, and vice versa. And I think the other thing is you also have to have that as a caveat. You shouldn't just come to Chile and say, oh, I'm planning to have a bunch of interviews, because they could also not work out, and then it's a quite expensive trip. So I would definitely have several Skype conversations, interviews with as many people as possible before, and then if necessary plan and, you know, conduct the interview in person.
Awesome. Thank you.
I just one other thing, and on top of what Rita said, I think I would say I very much agree. Trying to connect and show a lot of effort is really helpful. You know, one email or one call to go through, and then people will you know, come back to you. Oftentimes you need to, you know, keep calling, you know, keep connecting. You know, it's important, and not too often, because then it can be a little bit too much. But you know, in a normal social, almost like in a normal social context, you know, how you keep up with people. You know, it's very important to build a relationship, and so this is also a way even to build a relationship. So to connect and to call and to Skype, it's actually it's a very good way to build a connection.
Mm-hmm. Great. Awesome. So for our next question, I think this is the one, is when applying for a job abroad, and what is better to use in terms of UCLA? Is the acronym better, UCLA better, or is University of California, Los Angeles better? Which is more notoriety abroad?
I'll just answer that quickly. I always put UCLA in parentheses and then next to it University of California, because as an example, in Chile There is a small private university that has the exact same acronym, so I would not use the acronym because you don't know what there might be in that particular country.
Got it. Cool, Derek?
Yeah, yeah. I would say pretty much the same thing. You know, the brand UCLA is the acronym UCLA is not so well known in China, though it's getting more well known day by day. University of California, Los Angeles, and you know the key is Los Angeles because there's another school out there that has this University of California somehow in its name. And so it's good to put that distinction down.
Yes. In fact, in Chile, when people speak of UCLA, they speak of UCLA. And for a while, I had no idea what they were talking about. So it's not UCLA, and they don't even say UCLA either. So, yeah, I think it's better to kind of keep one in parentheses for sure.
Good tip. Thank you. Great. So then when finding a place to live, here's our next question. So when finding a place to live, are we to find a place before moving, or find some other way to search for a place once we're already there? Does that make sense? So should we find a place before we go, or should we find a place once we're already at the new location? Derek, do you want to start?
Sure. I think that you probably want to find a place after you get there. I think, however, doing research before you get there is also very important. So you can actually save a lot of time. You want to make your house as efficient and as quickly as possible. I would recommend maximum because it takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of your day, and it's not easy. And for some people, it's not that fun. So search online. You can talk to people who know, or the people recommended you to work in that company, or the advice before you make the move out, and then exactly sort of the kind of location. And you also need to know location. Sometimes it's important. Shanghai is a very big city, so it could take an hour if you're not right, traffic, depending on many things. So you want to be clear on where you're going to be commuting to, so that you could find the right location where you want to live.
I think Santiago is a very varied city, and from neighborhood to neighborhood, there are going to be lots of different things. And so if you ask somebody that you're going to be working with, they may give you what they consider the coolest, nicest neighborhood. But you, as a foreigner, may think that the more downtown, vibey, cool, hipster place is better. And so then you'll end up living in the stuffy, shishi area that is not exciting. And so I think it's really important to sort of, have, like we're doing here, have the Skype calls with the realtors, talk to them, see if you can get, even Google Maps, try to look at the neighborhoods, whatever, that satellite, whatever it's called, try to see the neighborhoods visually that you think you might like, and like Derek was saying, do a lot of research before, so maybe rent something short term and then find something that you really like, because otherwise there's a lot of traffic in Santiago at peak times. So if, you may be sacrificing a lot by paying attention to someone who maybe has a totally different lifestyle expectation than what you do. You want to have as a foreigner in a different city.
Great, thank you. Those great answers. Thank you for your insight. So for our next question, so when preparing your resume for an international job search, are there specific elements or experiences that you should highlight over others? So Derek, would you start us off on that question?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I think for going abroad, companies are looking for people who have specific skill sets, not general skill sets. If they were looking for general skill sets, they would probably look internally in their own or general skill sets. So if you have something specific, if it's a language, if it's a expertise or things that you're good at. She could be
Looks like we're having some technical difficulties. So, Bernadita?
Do you want me to answer that? Okay.
No.
Yes, I think that you should highlight, like what Derek was saying, or at least what I could hear, was the fact that you should do whatever is specific to you that makes you stand out. But I also think that it's really good to show that you're someone who can adapt to new situations, new countries, new people, new customs. I think those things are really important. So maybe if you did a junior year abroad and, ended up getting the best grades when you were abroad or whatever, you may want to highlight something as simple as that, because it shows that you're capable of adapting.
Great.
And you heard me okay, right?
Yes, I heard you great. Thank you so much, everyone, just for rolling with us on the technical difficulties. Derek, can you connect with us again? Do you hear us? Okay. Why don't we keep moving forward, and potentially he could connect back with us again. We are having some internet connection issues. The internet connection to China isn't so great, and also sometimes there's some ins and outs. So bear with us, and we will get Derek back online. So for our next question, oops, actually, give me just a second. Bernadita, oops. There he is. Great. Hi, Derek.
better.
Yes, better.
Good.
So you are still alive. We're back.
Good.
So we're back. So did you want to finish your comment on the last questions, Derek?
Yeah, I actually could hear you both really well. So
Great.
I think what Bernadita said was very relevant, and it's very important to remember. So just generally speaking, highlight what you're good at. Show that show what you're interested in, and I think maybe talk about yourself. One other thing is maybe some personal, be a little bit more personal. Talk about how you, what you like, and allow people to get to know you as an individual. Sometimes that's helpful as well. And if that connection is with that company, with that country or company, that would also be
Awesome. Great. So on to our next question. So how has the UCLA Alumni Network helped you abroad? Do you deal with Bruins regularly or know a few in your city? Or is it more of a virtual support network or more US based? So Derek, if you could take that question first.
Sure. This is something that I think is extremely great about UCLA is that we have these fantastic networks all over the world. The network is hopefully in the city that you want to go to very useful, because I find that UCLA Bruins are extremely passionate. They love their school, and they're very cool people, generally speaking. So I find that they're usually very helpful. In China, it's a really growing group. I don't know how it is in Chile, but it's extremely vibrant because it's growing, and people are excited when a new Bruin shows up, and I think they're willing to connect and help each other. You can get a lot of useful information. You can get job leads. You can get living, how to live leads, social leads. It's all there. And even UCLA then connects with the greater UC. We have in China. I don't know if this is another even connect with the UC system, because all of our UC schools are fairly small and sort of starting up all together in regions like China. So then you get connected to Berkeley people, Irvine. So it's actually quite. It's really useful, and it's good to be. It's also good to stay connected to UCLA.
In Chile, I would say that at least in my particular case, there's very few liberal arts people. I think when the last meeting we had here, there was something like 96 males, most of them MBA, a few doctors, and a few engineers and economics people. And there were 3 women to the meeting I went to, and myself included. Only, of course, 1 in liberal arts, which was me. So it was actually to my advantage. It's kind of a funny story, but I was thinking that we needed to bring in art history to Chile, and I wanted to do something with UCLA. I just didn't know exactly what. And so I went to this meeting where the chancellor was at the American ambassador's residence, and one of the things he said in his speech was, we really love our Chilean MBA econ people. I mean, we have so many of you. We have such a strong leadership area of, the Anderson School, blah, blah, blah. He goes, but we want to see more women, and we want to see more different areas. And so I went up to him and said, I want to do something with our foundation and, with art history and with the art history program at UCLA. And I said, and I'm what you're looking for. I'm a woman, and I'm an art historian from UCLA. So today, actually, our foundation has signed an agreement with UCLA to bring graduate students and professors to Chile to study and research art historical topics here in Chile. So it worked. So yeah, I mean, it's something. I don't see it as a huge support, but I do think that it's something that is in the beginning stages here. But I do think it will with, I think, the professors and the graduate students coming here to do these research, I think we'll get further along.
That's great. Very cool. It's awesome that you
is
going so far. Great. So for our next question, can you explain work visas? Is this a process different in each country, and how does someone navigate that? So Derek, if you could start us off, that'd be great.
Visas are less easy to get. Working visas, that is, less easy to get than before, because there's been a fairly large influx of let's say foreigners coming into China for jobs. It's pretty vibrant, good in China, and so people from all the world are coming here. So a lot of times all the time the work visa needs to be sponsored by a company, and then take you through the process. To get a work visa in China on your own is pretty much, as far as I understand, not possible. And if you do get a work visa from a company, usually the company will application process. Part of it is done with the U.S. So in the U.S., with the Chinese consulate, and then part of that process is done in a China going through the right authorities here. So it's not that complex. It's pretty straightforward, but it involves a lot of Chinese documentation. Again, this is taken care of by the company, so that's sort of how it works. You kind of have to have a job to get a work visa. But for a tourist visa, it's pretty straightforward and simple to get that into China.
I would say in Chile it's similar. It's considerably easier from what I hear. I happen to be a Chilean citizen, so I didn't have to go through that. But from what I understand, speaking to other people, as an example, I belong to a group of English-speaking women that I belonged to when I first arrived in Chile 10 years ago. There was only 200. Today, there's about 1,500. So we do get a lot of immigration from all over the world, and it seems like it's a relatively easy process. And from what I understand, you also do need to have a job, but you can come as a tourist and then get the job. It doesn't have to be the other way around. And right now, Chile is still fairly open to immigration, especially educated immigrants.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for your answers. So for our next question, let's see. So we have a question from Michelle. She says, I am often in London. Do you ever think it is a good idea to ever drop off my resume personally, or is that looked down upon? So Derek, you can go first.
Sure. Yeah, I actually go to London quite a bit. We have an office in London as well. I would say that if you are in London, if you want to drop it off, I don't think that's it's not, I wouldn't say look down upon. I would say it's actually probably it could be looked better upon. The British people, as far as I can see, are they're quite entrepreneurial type of people as a culture and as a society. So they like doing things that are outwardly driven. They like people who are engaging, and they like to engage. They're quite good at that themselves. So I would encourage you to do that. I encourage you to connect with the UCLA Alumni Network when you're out there. There's some interesting people, as I understand, in that group. And I would also say that as you go to London, definitely network and try to find as many interesting people you can to get to know and find a job that way.
I would also say that, I think it's going to depend on the individual. It has happened to me, and it depends on the resume, too. Because I always read everything I get, and sometimes I'm like, why did this person even come here? And other times I'm like, ooh, cool, I'm so glad this person dropped off their resume. I'm going to call them, or I'll keep it for when I can offer them a possibility of a job. So I think it depends on the individual, and I also think it's really important to follow up on that drop-off. So you drop it off, you wait a week, you send an email, you make a phone call, you come back and visit the next month and say, hey, I came and I dropped off this resume for Mr. Jones. Do you think you'd have 5 minutes to speak to me? I'm in town for the next week, especially if you're going back and forth a lot. At least I would say that shows determination. And a lot of people, one of the things I had said in this talk when we were preparing is people ask me how I happened to continue working in the arts with just a bachelor's in art history. And I said it was two things: my languages and determination, perseverance. Because most of the people that graduated with me, a lot of them do not work in the arts, but perseverance is how I continued. So yes, you can do it.
Awesome. That's so cool. Thank you. Okay, so for our next question, I think it's being selected. So actually, let's talk about salary. So will your salary always be in the country's currency, or will it be in dollars if we're here? So how do you plan a budget when you're used to U.S. currency? Derek, if you can start us off, that'd be great.
Sure. The way China works, and a lot of countries, they go on their own local currency because for their fiscal and their tax and everything they do, they try to keep it in their own local currency. And so that means that typically you or we sort of deal with that ourselves and that local currency. This is the most, I would say that's very clear as somebody else's currency. The other thing you need to think about how you declare your tax if you're a U.S. side, because the U.S. has a global tax. You have to deal with a couple of issues with salary, but that's an
I would say that in Chile it would be the same. It would most of the time be in the local salary. I mean, unless for some reason at a very high level you could perhaps negotiate it, but unlikely for the same exact reasons, for fiscal and tax reasons. How do you plan a budget when you're used to U.S. currency? I think it's going to be hard, and I think the best is, again, research, ask people, network. You need to find out what it costs to go grocery shopping, what gas costs, what a rental cost is, what a school cost is, because, but so you need to start networking with either the people that you're at the work with, and then looking into the schools that you think might be of interest, or possibly coming up with prices, and then probably negotiate your salary according to that, because there can be huge differences. In Chile, for instance, I would say that people that make over, let's just say as an amount, over $4,000 a month would have their children in private school. But private school can range anywhere from $200 to $1,000 a month, and a little more even. So, because it's just something that you're going to want to do. Public school education is not great here yet. There are some that are good, but most people find that if they can afford private school, they will try for private school for their children, and that can be quite a pinch in your savings.
Great. Thank you for that. That's very good to know. Thank you. Okay, so for our next question, let's see. So what are some tips for negotiating a contract? You mentioned, actually, no, we'll go to a different question. So this is actually from Dominic. This question is, as a liberal arts graduate, what skills do you recommend I gain? And what skills do you think I can say I already have during job applications and interviews in order to become a more attractive applicant? Does that make sense? So Derek, we can start us off.
liberal arts major.
Actually, why don't we go to Bernadita for now, as we are working through our technical issues. Bernadita, if you could answer that question as a liberal arts graduate. Yeah.
I think one of the, well, ideally, especially if you're thinking of looking for a job in another country, is you really want, do you hear me? You really want to focus on languages. You want to focus on your capacity to adapt yourself to new situations. And I think the fact that you could be, I guess, excited about going to another country, excited about learning more, and showing your passion about that other country. In terms of what skills, I guess it would depend on the job. Well, as a liberal arts, you're going to want to show that you're good at arguing, a point of view, that you're good at writing, because a lot of people that study other areas perhaps may not be as good at with their writing skills. I think that's all that I can think of right now. Maybe Terry has a better idea if we're lucky to get him online now.
Great. We're trying to connect with Derek. So Yeah, we're trying to get connected. Having some issues across global lines. So actually, Bernadita, if you could actually, let's go to another question.
Okay.
So let's see, what are some tips for negotiating a contract to move abroad? What do international employers typically pay for?
I did not have a job when I moved here, so that's hard for me to actually talk about from my experience. I think you can negotiate whatever you can negotiate. It's up to the individual person negotiating and their capacities to negotiate. I don't think that you can be so general about what do international employers typically pay for, because it depends on the job. If it's a high-level job, they may pay for the move. If it's a mid-level arts job, as an example, they probably won't. So it's going to really depend on the level of the position. If you're going to be an administrative assistant, no one's going to pay for your move to come to Chile. Forget it. You're lucky if you'll get an airline ticket. If you're going to be the CEO of a company, you can probably negotiate a house,
Yeah.
So I think it really depends on your capacities for negotiation and the level of the position.
Great. Thank you.
I think Derek is on now, right? So he can probably give a better answer.
Awesome. So welcome back, Derek. Thank you for working through our technical issues. So the question was, what are some tips for negotiating a contract to move abroad? What do international employers typically pay for? And if you could explain that process to us, that'd be great.
Bernadita.
Oops.
Yes. Comment.
Derek, can you hear us?
That's it. I can you hear me?
You're a little bit choppy, Derek.
Me now?
Yes, we can hear you now. Great.
And so what I was saying.
Derek, it looks like we're having still some issues. I think it's probably the connection from China through our Uvu video. So, can you hear me now?
So
Great. Derek, can you hear us now? Okay, thank you to all of our viewers for bearing with us on this technical issue. During our testing, this never arose, so now we're working through our international connections. Derek, can you hear me now?
I can hear you.
Okay. So why don't we start it over? Can you hear me now? Okay.
Fine.
Okay. So why don't we start over on the question again about tips for negotiating a contract? Can you walk us through that process?
As I was saying, that the process is that the company will looking for, but they do have a budget in mind. So ask for all the different expat package, what we call expat package benefits, which includes housing. Sometimes it includes living allowances. But again, depending on what level you are, what's your scope, then it'll depend on what the company's prepared to and willing to pay. I think if I were younger and just starting out, I would be more open and flexible and just think of it as a learning experience. If I'm more seasoned and more experienced and I have a lot of value to add to a company, then that's when you can start asking questions on what are typical allowances given to people coming from overseas, and usually they have a standard. And if it's still not something that is enough, then then you would sort of talk to somebody who understands what is usually given in an expat package. And I would say talk to a recruiter or talk to somebody who's had an expat package, and and try to find out what you could get other than what's being particularly offered. So ask questions to your network, ask questions to your friends and people who know what's going on.
That's great.
Great answer.
And that's also a great way to use the Bruins in these different areas, right? They may have experience negotiating an expat package, or even understanding a little bit of costs and what you would need. So that's awesome.
That's right.
Thank you, Derek. Awesome. So for our next question, let's see. So in the job search abroad, what are some important things to avoid, either on your resume or in your interview? Derek?
Avoid. I would say, the resume should be very, very clear in terms of a couple of things. So instead of talking about avoiding, I'll talk a little bit first about what should be on there. One is sort of your real skill sets, what you're good at doing, what you've done that's very much relevant to the job that you held. You can put a lot of extra information about the company that you work for, but usually that's all online, and so an HR person or a leader, a company corporate leader could find out for themselves. I would rather use that precious space to sort of explain what you've done and how you've done it. Another thing is if you are want to show that you're strategic in nature, and that's always a good thing to do, is sort of how you've aligned yourself and what you've done to the company's goals, overall goals and objectives. I always like to see, I always see people, even at fairly senior positions, they could be a head of marketing or a head of a function, and they go very detailed into, I've created, $5 million in savings for a company by being tough on my advertising agency, and that's good, but I would rather see sort of how did whatever you do help the company achieve its goal, for example, creating a much bigger platform in another country, or becoming bigger in size and nature, or more strategic in a different way. So I think doing something that shows that you're aligned with the company overall objectives, shows that what sort of what the bigger overall picture is, plus then talking about your skill sets. I would avoid having a lot of grammatical errors. I would proofread really well my resume, make sure that it's error free, because any error looks really bad.
You're loud and clear. How about you, Bernadita? What do you think? What are things?
I agree with what Derek said, especially the grammatical errors. But also, I think it's important, especially when you're, at least here in Chile, or countries that are globalized today, but maybe weren't 30 years ago that globalized. So the local culture is still somehow, there's a lot of intricacies in terms of how to do business, and certain aspects of what to say and what not to say that kind of can be coded. It's not something that you may even get right away. So I would definitely do as much research as possible in terms of the local culture and what the business culture is like. Because you may not want to mention certain things. Like, for instance, in Chile, sometimes, like what you were saying about the me kind of, I, was able to sell 500 million. The me thing in Chile on a resume may look a little obnoxious culturally. So you have to be careful how you word it. You may want to say it because it's important, but you're going to maybe, like, kind of like what Derek said, word it in a way that I, was a key player in getting this to happen, and therefore we were able to hire however many new people for our team effort, something more along that line.
Great. Thank you. Also, so one more question from our audience, from Sarah. This is also regarding work visas. Are work visas generally granted for entry-level jobs, or should we focus our search on higher-level, more specific jobs when looking to work abroad? So Derek, if you could start, that'd be great. Or maybe Bernadita. Why don't you start?
Yes, like I said, in Chile, work visas are generally quite easy, but you probably should be in the country first because, like I said, they probably won't pay for your transfer, moving fees, etc. for an entry-level job, but they will get you your visa, and that shouldn't be a problem necessarily.
Right. Derek, are you back online with us? Can you hear us? Whoops. Okay. So it looks like he may have dropped off. Let's give him one more call. Oh, geez. So, okay. So why don't we, oh, goodness. Seems like there is a couple of issues with reaching Derek. So we will let us end our conversation. So thank you so much, Bernadita, for connecting us. And again, Derek may be on the line with us again. Let's see. Thank you for everyone for your patience. This is definitely very interesting. Hi, Derek. So let's have you. Let's see if we can get you.
Sorry about that.
It's okay. As we continue to move forward, you don't need to see me, but then at least you can see Derek. Everyone. So let's actually do this. We're going to close up our time together. Thank you both, Bernadita and Derek, for just taking the time and just for sharing with each of us your different perspectives on what it's like to find a job abroad. And so these questions are really only the tip of the iceberg, and so thank you for just giving us a little bit of an insight about what we should be expecting and what we can do to at least do our research and get ahead of the game. And so thank you so much also our audience members for working through with us on our different video and technical issues. I guess if you're looking to connect with people abroad, you should be very used to different technical issues and communicating and getting connected, even though it's not as easy as it would be in the States. And so thank you again for both of you for your insight today. And if you liked what you saw and you wanted to watch this session again, you can find it on our YouTube, our UCLA Alumni YouTube channel. And also, if you have any questions or feedback, or if you're a great tech wizard and you know how to fix all these different issues, please email us, and we would love to get your insight and get your feedback as well. So, and lastly, if you're considering a move abroad and you want to connect to UCLA Bruins all over the globe, let us know, and you can connect with them through our Director of International Outreach, Lily Sao, and you can email her at internationalnetworks@alumni.ucla.edu. And again, thank you so much to Derek and Bernadita and our audience. Thank you so much for sticking with us through all these different tech issues. But thank you so much just for being part of our third episode of a Living Globally series. And so thank you so much, and have a great night, and go Bruins.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.